Slater Crusaders. America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks for being here. Masks, vaccines, lockdowns. We still doing this? It's mask nonsense. I have 6 points that you need to know to inform your friends and family or that person scolding you in the grocery store to put your mask on. 6 points you need to know, arming you with the facts and the true story. 6 points. Let's do it. First, push back. When people say with masks, they say, oh, what's the big deal? It's just a little thing. It's just a little thing. It's a modest inconvenience. No. It is an inhumane imposition. It's not a little thing. It's a very big thing to force me to put a dehumanizing piece of cloth over my face everywhere I go. And it is monstrous to force me to do that to my children. Okay? Push back on, it's just the little things. No. It is an inhumane imposition. Face-to-face communication is essential for human social interaction. Sharing a smile with someone can cause a greater form of bonding than even a physical touch. And we have cut off a massively important form of communication and empathy and social intelligence. And it has to stop. We've had social media for, a decade dehumanizing us. And now a year of masks has completely crippled our ability to communicate properly with each other. And here's another point. Some adults, can go back to normal. Maybe, right? But because you've been alive for 40 years or whatever it is. So 1 year out of 40 years is not a big deal. If you're 7, 1 year is an eternity. There's no normal. This is the new normal if you're a kid now. That's a terrible thing. Every time you're putting a mask on a kid, you are crushing their soul. I know you may be like, why put a mask on my kids? It's not, no. You're crushing their soul. Knock it off. I've talked to doctors, and one of the tests for autism is they'll show pictures of faces to children to see if the kids can recognize their facial expression and the emotion that they're trying to share based on the person's face. Kids aren't learning how to do that right now. There's going to be major consequences to an entire generation of children who cannot understand facial expressions. Add on top of that video games and everything else, and we're setting our kids up for a horrific failure. It is a horrific thing we're doing to kids. It's horrific. Masks impose a massive psychological cost to individuals and to our society, and it needs to stop. So get your friends and family who are vaccinated, certainly. But everybody, stop wearing masks. Stop wearing them in stores. I'm being serious. I don't know what your regulations are where you live, but in California, you still have to wear them everywhere you go. Stop. Push back. It's done. It's not going to stop unless you stop it. It's not going to stop unless you stop them. It is not a modest inconvenience. That's the first point. Second point, we humans are terrible at risk assessment. So there's something called Calabresi's fable. Calabresi is a professor at Yale Law School, and he's been telling this story for decades. So here's the story. Imagine a God comes down and he says, hey, everyone, I got this great new invention, and it's going to improve your life in nearly every way. With this invention, you can spend more time with your friends and family. You can see things and do jobs that you otherwise wouldn't do. You can live places you otherwise wouldn't live. It's an amazing thing. But comes at a cost. In exchange for me giving you this invention, I, God, will choose 40,000 people every year and strike them dead. Do you take it? So he would ask this question to every law school class he had, and almost every single person in the room would always say, no, I will not take that deal. That invention is not worth 40,000 people a year dying. He's talking about the car. 40,000 people die in car wrecks every year. About 100 Americans will die in a car accident today. 100 people will die in car accidents today. Do you know how many vaccinated people are going to die of COVID today? 0. You're going to have vaccinated people die from car accidents today, but you're not going to have any vaccinated people die from COVID today. If you're vaccinated, you have no risk of getting sick or being hospitalized or dying of COVID. You maybe have a risk of getting infected with COVID. Maybe. It's like 0.001. But you don't have a risk of going to the hospital. Certainly don't have a risk of dying. We need to recalibrate our risk assessment. We do it with cars, but we can't understand it with COVID for some reason. So let's snap out of that and figure this out. Third point, virtue signaling. All right, did you see Biden at the climate change conference? We're going to talk about this coming up a little bit with David HARSANYI, but this is Biden at the World Global Climate Change Conference. He's the only one with a mask. All the other world leaders don't have masks on, and Biden's the one fool, the one clown that's got a mask on. And I should note, he's also the only person that doesn't have a flag of the nation behind him. Every other person, every other world leader has their flag behind him. He doesn't, but we'll save that for another day. This is some Huffington Post writer. They have like 200,000 followers or whatever. And he put a picture of him with a mask. He's since deleted this tweet, but we have it here. He said, retweet if you're partially or fully vaccinated, but you're still wearing a mask to help protect your community. Hashtag wear a mask. And the responses are just obscene. Someone wrote, fully vaxxed for a month. Still don't feel comfortable going out much. Mostly for curbside pickup. Always wear 2 masks when I walk out my door. I mask up to protect others as well as myself. You're vaccinated. You're protected. What are you doing? You don't get it. Here's another one. Still wearing 2 masks until the CDC tells me to stop. But you're vaccinated. Someone said fully vaccinated, absolutely wearing a mask and acting the same as I did before I was vaccinated. Well, then why get vaccinated? Fully vaccinated in January, still wearing a mask and getting ticked off with all the jerks exercising in public without a face mask. But they're outside and you're vaccinated. People, wake up. What are you doing? You must admit that you're not doing this based on science. You're not doing what we just saw here for any other reason other than to virtue signal to others that you are a good, caring person. And in the cult of progressivism, showing how much you care is the highest virtue. Actually, doing something of significance is not a virtue. It's virtue signaling how wonderful you are. That's all that's necessary. And that's all this is, taking mask selfies, bragging that you're still wearing a mask even after you got vaccinated. So you wearing a mask after you're vaccinated, that's either virtue signaling or it's out of fear, which is also bad. And that's my 4th point. Don't live in fear. Wall Street Journal wrote an article this weekend about a woman, a grandma, who was so excited to finally see her grandchildren. It's been a year and a half. Her grandkids are like 3 and 6. She got vaccinated, which is a miracle that we even have this vaccine, let alone one that's so effective. Remember the one in China that they have? It's only 50% effective, right? So that's not good. Ours is like 99% effective, right? So she got vaccinated. She got the 2 shots. She's waited 2 weeks. Life is good. She can't wait. She's so excited to finally get on a plane and go see her grandchildren. But her daughter still won't let grandma see her grandkids until the kids are vaccinated too. Good night, lady. What is wrong with you? Your grandma has no chance of, first of all, getting sick, second, of spreading the virus, but then even if she were to spread it by some chance, your kids have no chance of getting sick of it. Like, what are you doing? There's a way higher chance that your grandma gives your kids strep throat or something, right? Or the croup or something than COVID. And you're gonna wait till your kids are vaccinated? Come on. And I'll prove that there's nothing to fear. The governor of Michigan, Whitmer, right? Maybe the most locked down state in the country still. I was there a couple days ago, right? Everything's still shut down, restaurants, everything. She, last month, went to Florida. You with me? The governor of Michigan went to Florida to visit her dad as she was telling people not to go to Florida because it's so dangerous. Now she got caught and her spokesperson or whatever says, oh, well, it was a safe visit because her dad is vaccinated and the governor doesn't have COVID. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's fine. You should have gone to see your dad, no problem. But it's fine for the rest of us too. There's nothing to fear, especially if you have the vaccine. You're fine. Go outside. See your grandkids. Let your parents see your kids. Jeez. All right, number 5. We're on number 5. Yeah, number 5. No one wants to talk about the real problem when it comes to COVID. And one day we will. One day we'll have the courage in our country to talk about the real problem. It's going to be a lot. It'll be like 100 years from now, right? It'll be a long time. People will look back on it and write about it, but can't touch it now. This is why COVID has been so bad in America. Here's Bill Maher talking about this last week.
I know you've heard me pound this fried drumstick before, but since I last mentioned it, a stunning statistic was reported. 78% of those hospitalized, ventilated, or dead from COVID have been overweight. It is the key piece of the puzzle, by far the most pertinent factor, but you dare not speak its name. Imagine how many lives could have been saved if there had been some national campaign a la Michelle Obama's Let's Move program, with the urgency of the pandemic behind it. If the media and the doctors had made a point to keep saying, but there's something you can do, but we'll never know because they never did. Because the last thing you want to do is say something insensitive. We would literally rather die. Instead, we were told to lock down. Unfortunately, the killer was already in the house, and her name is Little Debbie.
That's such a good line. We would literally rather die than talk about something that's insensitive or politically incorrect. A new study just came out the other day. They followed 48,000 patients in Southern California. And the ones who regularly exercised over this last year had a significantly lower chance of getting sick or going to the hospital from COVID. So we were told we need to lock down. You got to hunker inside because of COVID. Hide, don't do anything ever, don't move. That's a great example of perhaps the opposite is true. One of the themes of the show. We're told one thing and you got to think, well, maybe the opposite is true. And this is a good example of that, right? We were told to lock down and go inside. What's the opposite of locking down and going inside? Going outside. Go do things. Run around. Get in shape. Be healthy. We were told to go inside, and the answer was we needed to go outside. But you can't talk about that. Final point. Number 6. The recommendations that we still have around today, the CDC recommendations, are not based on science. They're based on feelings. Look at these 2 vaccinated people. This is our vice president and whoever from CNN. What in the world is that? What is that, the new CDC standard that 2 vaccinated people must stay at least 38 feet apart from each other? What is that? That's virtue signaling as well. But what's the science behind that picture? All right, it's just feelings. I live in San Diego, and our local paper wrote an article about these partitions, these barriers that kids that are around desks at school, right? So what's happening in San Diego, and maybe happening at your school too, kids are now back in school, but they still have to sit in separate rooms. So they sit at these desks behind these barriers on 3 sides around them with headphones on, watching a computer screen, doing a Zoom, like distance learning. They're in school, but they're still distance learning because everyone needs to be spread out, right? So like, what a horrific thing to do to a child. Like, you go to school and you put them in a desk, they sit there all day, put a mask on in this protective force field barrier, headphones on, watching a computer screen, and we call that school. And the teacher's just in like the room over. This is insane what we're doing. Here's the headline. Should San Diego area schools use desk barriers to prevent COVID spread? And the subheadline says, experts don't recommend them. But for some educators, it's a psychological assurance of safety. So it says experts don't recommend them, but it's a psychological assurance. Knock it off. We are way past the need for psychological assurances of safety. Okay, get a grip, people. There's no end to this, right? There's no end to that. You could always say we need to do things for psychological assurances of safety. But I would rather live in reality, where we make decisions based on actual risk assessments and take proper precautions where it's necessary, but live freely where it's not necessary to take any extra precautions. How is this a controversial view to have? But what about these barriers, all right? I love this. So they quote Dr. Kim Prather. She is a University of California, San Diego expert on aerosols, right? This is the woman who in the very beginning of this stuff said it's not safe to go to the beach because COVID can live in the beach and the water, and the water comes and it crashes on the shore and it crashes against rocks and it shoots COVID particles up into the air. Okay, that's this woman. But even she says these barriers aren't necessary. So she's been consulting with the schools. She says that desk barriers actually increase the risk of COVID transmission when not set up properly, which is common. That's because the barriers can potentially trap air that contains infectious aerosols in the breathing zone. To set them up properly, schools need to do high-level fluid dynamic modeling to place barriers in the correct positions and at the correct height relative to the room's airflow. Quote, pretty much impossible. Safest to just not put them in. So the barriers make it worse. The superintendent of a local school district in San Diego said, we're going to keep them in because it's made our staff feel safer and we've become accustomed to them. Yeah. But no, the experts say it's worse. It makes it worse. Oh, but we need the psychological assurance of safety. Yeah. Your psychological assurance of safety may be great, but I'm telling you, Dr. Kim Prather of UCSD, aerosol expert, is telling you, it makes it worse. So which would you rather do? Your psychological assurance of safety or what's true? Stop acting on your feelings. And that's what so much of this COVID has been. Are we going to do what feels right? Or are we going to do what's actually good? So, to review, masks are not a modest imposition. They're an inhumane imposition and monstrous to force on our children. Second, we need to be better at risk assessment, please. Third, stop virtue signaling and call out other people when they do it as well when it comes to their masks, especially vaccinated. If you're vaccinated, take off your mask, live life, act like you're immune because you are. Fourth, don't live in fear for no reason. 5, the real problem with COVID is obesity, but political correctness says we can't talk about it. So everyone gets locked down instead, which is the opposite thing we should have done. And number 6, operate based on science, not feelings. Facts over feelings. Some other conservative commentator already stole that line. So that's why here on this show we say always look for the true story. Coming up next, I got the true story on that shooting in Columbus. I know everyone's talked about it to death already, but there's one aspect of this story that no one's talked about. This is the worst part of the whole video and story, and no one's mentioned it once. We'll do that next. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, I got a final point to make about that officer shooting the girl in Columbus, Ohio. Remember the girl who's about to stab another person in the neck? Remember that one? The officer saved the girl's life. Now, to be fair, we cannot really know if the girl was going to stab the other girl in the neck or if the face or the chest. Don't know exactly where the knife was going. But somehow the police officer who saved that girl's life is now called a murderer. So there's one aspect of this story that no one is talking about. There's a lot of aspects, but one in particular that we must talk about. First, before we get to that, let's give the quick background here. This is what the police officer knew, all right? Here, there were 2 911 calls. This is the only real one. The second 911 call was like 20 seconds, and someone's like, hey, there's a big fight going on outside. Oh, wait, never mind, police showed up, and then they hung up. Now so there's one 911 call. Here it is.
911, where is your emergency?
Hello? It's 3171. Legion Lane.
Is there an apartment number letter? What's going on?
Come up here. The
Ma'am, you
address
need to talk to me.
is 3171. We got these grown girls over here trying to fight us, trying to stab us, trying to put our hands on our grandma. Get here now.
Have you seen any weapons? Ma'am, do you see any weapons?
We need a police officer here now.
Do you see any weapons?
Police officer now.
Ma'am, do you see any weapons?
On the dog trying to hear us. No!
In the name of full disclosure, that clip was about 1 minute and 10 seconds, and we cut it down to like 40 seconds. We didn't take out any audio. We just took out a couple of like longer breaks where there was just fighting in the background just for the sake of time. So get here now. How about that, right? So cop arrives and happens upon this scene. And again, watch how fast it happens.
Hey. What's going on? Hey, what's going on? Hey, 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 get down, get down, get down, get down.
I knew how fast it happened, and I got caught off guard here. Watch it. I forgot how fast it even happened. I knew how fast it happened. Now, a couple things here. First, if you give me this, oh, he should have shot the knife out of her hands. Okay? I'm so sick of that. All this stupidity will never stop as long as people still think that that's a possibility, that that's a thing anyone could do. That's not a thing. That doesn't exist. That only exists in movies. You can't shoot a knife out of someone's hand. Okay? Someone say, oh, you should have used a taser. Taser wouldn't have stopped that. Taser wouldn't have stopped it immediately. I've also heard idiots say, heard well-intentioned people say, he should have tackled the girl or used his words. That would have been good. Excuse me, you two, knock it off. Hey, come on, you two. Calm down, everyone. That would have worked. So what's the officer to do? Just stand there and let that girl kill the other girl? Officers got an obligation to stop a stabbing from happening. Right? That's what officers are trained to do, and they're trained to prioritize the lives of non-aggressors over the lives of aggressors. I mean, it's hard to hear, but they're taught, in this case, to value the life of the girl in the pink who's about to get stabbed more than the stabber's life in that instant. An officer can't just stand there and watch someone get attacked. Now, the reaction from the left of this shooting has been amazing. Apparently, let them fight is the new Black Lives Matter rallying cry, right? Oh, let them fight it out. It's just a knife fight. This is Valerie Jarrett. Valerie Jarrett she wasn't Obama's chief of staff, but she was like his #1 advisor, and she's definitely got Joe Biden's ear in this White House as well. I don't even know. She may have an official position as well, but she's super influential, super high up. Valerie Jarrett. She said a black teenage girl named Ma'Khia Bryant was killed because a police officer immediately decided to shoot her multiple times in order to break up a knife fight. Demand accountability, fight for justice, Black Lives Matter. like that's her point. Like, oh, let them fight. One of the major Black Lives Matter activists, Bree Newsom, she said teenagers have been having fights involving knives for eons. Eons. Let them stab each other. No big deal. Has anyone talked to the girl who's about to get stabbed? Can someone please, someone in the media, put a microphone in front of the girl who's about to get stabbed and have her say, thank you, police officer. Really appreciate you saving my life. Keep in mind as well, the day before this happened, the day before, in Ohio, a 13-year-old girl stabbed and killed another 13-year-old girl with a knife. A 13-year-old stabbed and killed another 13-year-old the day before in the same state. But let them fight it out or whatever. Amazing. Police officer saves the life of a black woman and they're trying to make it a racist murder. If someone was that close to stabbing me or my wife, and that every single Black Lives Matter activist or whatever who's upset about this knows the exact same thing. You would hope that officer would shoot this person who was about to kill you. No one who's about to get stabbed would be like, officer, could you please try to de-escalate this situation verbally? Be like, no, shoot them. Okay, that's all the background. You know all this. Here's the part that we need to focus on right now that no one's playing in, that no one's focused on. We're gonna play this again here. We've zoomed in and highlighted an important part of this video that no one has focused on, no one's paid attention to. So again, this is the body camera footage, but instead of watching the action, Look over off to the side here. Here it is.
Hey. What's going on? Hey, what's going on? Hey, 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 get down, get down, get down, get down.
Did you see it? Guys, sorry, can you do it one more time? I just want to make sure everyone's, it's happened so fast. Look at the guy. So the woman falls to the ground, and then there's a guy standing there, like an adult. I don't know, he's like 40 years old or something. Play it one more time.
Hey. What's going on? Hey, what's going on? Hey, 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 get down, get down, get down, get down.
The guy winds up and punts the woman's face. Like winds up and kicks a 50-yard field goal with the girl's face on the ground. I don't even know who that was, woman, girl. I mean, if Ma'Khia was 16, it was like a 16-year-old girl on the ground. And the guy just wound up and kicked her in the face. And then, so the officer shoots Ma'Khia, right? This is right after the shooting. Okay, listen to this.
He's a kid, man. Damn, are you stupid? Kid?
Isn't that great? The guy's like, oh, it's just a kid. What'd you shoot her for? It's like, what, are you kidding me? 8 seconds ago, you kicked a girl in the face. Like full swing, wound up and punted her face. And now you're standing there all innocent like, oh man, what'd you shoot her for? She was stabbing someone and you just kicked that girl in the head, by the way. Is that guy arrested? Can we get an update on that? Are adult men allowed to kick? Listen, apparently now, according to Black Lives Matter, we're like, people are allowed to stab each other. And like, that's fine, just let them fight it out. Like we all remember when we grew up in the mall, there's knife fights all the time. Every Saturday night we had knife fights each other. And then we go out and get an Auntie Anne's pretzel to celebrate in the, in the mall food court. So everyone grew up with knife fights apparently. But are we also allowed to have men just kick girls in the face? Is this cool now? Are we all good? Gosh, we live in such a bizarre world. The narrative should be, thank you, officer. Really quick thinking there. Way to save a girl's life. The mother of the girl who was killed, who doesn't have custody, said her daughter's a peaceful and loving person. Now listen, I know it's not good to judge someone by their worst moment. Right? But the last image is of her lunging at someone with a knife, ready to kill them. And she wasn't lunging lovingly. This is yet another example of failure of society, failure of families, failure of individuals, and then we call the police to clean up our mess. And if it doesn't go exactly as planned, even when we say, get over here now, even when it doesn't go exactly as planned, even if a girl gets kicked in the face during it, we call the cops racist. Here's the true story. James Lindsay posted this piece of advice from his Uber driver. Uber driver wisdom, and we're going to spend more time on this tomorrow, but I just wanted to give this to you now. This Uber driver said there's 4 levels of responsibility. First, to yourself, to make yourself better. First level of responsibility is to yourself. Second level of responsibility is to your parents. Don't embarrass them. Third level of responsibility is to your society. Use your talents to do something productive. And your fourth level of responsibility is to God. Honor his word. You fail on these points for long enough, police are going to get called. Bad things could happen. We got to get back to these levels of responsibility. We'll all be better off. The great David HARSANYI from National Review coming up next about Biden's climate change global conference. Remember we just played the clip a second ago where he's the only one wearing a mask and the only one without a flag of the country he represents behind him. We'll talk about what else happened at that climate conference next. Spread the word.
We're helping ourselves, we're helping others in this endeavor. It really is important. And I just want to say one thing to Bird of the Navajo Nation. Let my wife come home. She likes the Navajo Nation too much. She keeps being out there. She's been out there for 2 days. She was out there before. I don't know. You know what I mean? I called her. I said, where are you? She said, oh, I'm staying another day. So, let her come home, okay? I don't want her, that's too far for me to commute.
What in the world? David HARSANYI's here to talk about that event that happened at the Climate Summit Conference of 40 world leaders, where Joe Biden said, we have a moral imperative to adopt an ambitious goal of cutting greenhouse emissions by 50% in the next 9 years and 100% by 2050. David HARSANYI from National Review. What's going on, David?
Not much. How you doing?
Good, man. You had a perfect article in the Daily Signal about all this. Tell us, so if the goal is to cut our emissions by 50% in the next 9 years, like no one has any perspective of what that even means, right? What's 50, like what are we now? What's 50% cut? What does that mean? How much have our emissions been cut when we shut down the entire economy for a year?
So last year, I believe carbon emissions were down 13%, I think. I think that's the number. And that's with shutting down big chunks of the economy for a very long time and making sure no one drives for a very long time. Obviously, there's a lot of pain that goes on with that. We'd have to pass a bunch of bailouts and stimulus bills. So you can imagine what that means in only 9 years of going to 50% and then whatever it is, 20-something years or 30 years to get to 100%. It's a massive endeavor that is just a complete fantasy.
Yeah, like so it's not even the cost of it, although absurd. But our standard of living, what would that even look like? What would our economy have to look like for that to happen?
It can't be done, and we shouldn't want to do it. Is really the argument. I mean, I don't want to. Why would I want to strip people of affordable energy? I mean, it's the lifeblood of the economy. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, to do what they want to do, I'd have to retrofit every building. I have to get rid of all cars. I'd have to get rid of air travel. I'd have to get rid of meat. I'd have to get rid of tons of things that people rely on every day to, simply when you go to a Walmart and buy something that's affordable, it's partly because there's affordable fuel to make it and to bring it to you. So it seems counterintuitive, or maybe the first time in human history where we have leaders saying we need to we need to have less. We need to have less wealth. We need to destroy the things we have. It doesn't make any sense.
So what's the motivation? What's the root motivation behind all this thing?
Well, the motivation is climate change. And obviously, I think that I'm not a climate change denier, though I deny that it is as destructive as they say. I think that all the evidence, all quantifiable evidence, show human life getting better and better. And in fact, in the last 30 to 40 years, it shows less and less harmful pollution. Carbon dioxide, well, that's going to be John Kerry said he wants to take it all out of the air. So I don't, it is this scary apocalyptic vision they have that you can't debunk because it's not happened, right? So they can scare you with it. But I've been around long enough to hear these kind of predictions for a long time. It's just not coming true. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't do anything to make the environment cleaner. I think we have efficiencies going on all the time, and I'm all for market efficiencies, but I'm not for mandates and gigantic subsidies that change the way we live and dismantle modern living. First of all, other people aren't going to follow our lead who still aren't where we are, China, India, places like that. And for us to just hand over our economic advantages in that way is just self-destructive, I think.
Can we go one step even deeper? What motivates the people's fear? Let's say our politicians, right? Because that's maybe different than your neighbor who wants a clean environment. Like John Kerry, what's John Kerry or Biden or all these people? What's their what's what I'm looking for? Like philosophical fear. What's the root of that for them?
If I'm being cynical, which I will be, then my point, I think that they want power. I mean, when you say anything that involves carbon emissions is now under the power of government and we get to control it, then essentially you control everything. People who want to take over or control energy to the extent they do are essentially nationalizing the energy policies of the energy companies of the United States. And if you dictate exactly what they can make and can't make, same thing with cars, same thing with flying, same thing with meat. I think they want power. I think they many of them dislike the United States. I think that we are, selfish and greedy and dirty. And many of them, like John Kerry, of course, are massive, massive hypocrites and not worth really listening to in any way. There is literally, John Kerry is one of the wrongest people who's ever lived on earth. And I just don't mean about this. I mean, just about across the board. He's been terrible about everything. But I think it's power, and that's usually the answer to that question, right?
Yeah. We have a John Kerry clip. Let's play this one real quick.
We still have to get carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere.
I understand that you came here with a private jet. Is that an environmental way to travel?
If you offset your carbon, it's the only choice for somebody like me who is traveling the world to win this battle.
There you go. So these people are against nuclear, right? Because that doesn't give them power, right?
Well, that's another thing. I mean, if you're against nuclear energy and fracking, you're not a serious person on this. You know, the number of solar panels, for instance, right now, I think make up 2% of our energy generation as far as electricity goes. Can you imagine how many solar panels we would need and, across the country to bring it up to even 10%? I mean, it would be massive. And windmills. And these are not efficient forms of energy because they don't always work. So nuclear energy, of course, is a big answer. Now, I'm not as big on nuclear energy as everyone else is. I'm not against it. I think it's a good idea. I just think that it's super expensive, and with the amount of regulatory, upfront costs, it's immensely expensive. And we have very cheap energy. We just make a hole in the ground and take it out. So why aren't we doing that, right? But I'm for it. And if you're not for it, then you're not serious. And they're not. And I think the answer there is that a lot of people like the idea maybe of nuclear, but no one actually wants to live near a nuclear plant, which I think that the fear is overblown, but it is what it is as far as politics.
What do you say to like the AOC argument that we need it's such a big problem. We need a big government, like shot to the moon, big investments, and only the government can solve this problem. The free market can't do it.
Well, we all know how well socialists did with the environment in Russia and China and North Korea and elsewhere. I mean, the idea that government's going to be more efficient or do a better job in that way is also kind of a fantasy. I don't like any moonshots for anything, especially not a moonshot that dismantles modernity. So I have no interest in that kind of thing, because to get it done, you have to strip people of their economic freedom of their choices in the marketplace, amongst many other things. Now, why would anyone want that? I just don't even think that something like that could be achieved anyway, because most people say they want to help the environment, but when you ask them what they're willing to do, it's quite little. And also constitutionally, because people have choices and freedom in this country. You can't do something like that with the restrictions, not the restrictions, but with the rights of the Constitution to have choices and freedom of movement, etc.
Last question for you, David. What does China think about this? We saw the president of China at this conference, right? And like playing along. But what does he think about America doing this to ourselves?
Oh, I think that they think it's great that we would give up our economic advantages of affordable energy. The Chinese will always promise to also participate in this 10, 20 years down the line. But I mean, they never keep any promises. So why would we believe them on this? They're building, I don't know how many coal-powered plants constantly. I mean, they build so many. And coal is obviously the dirtiest kind of electricity generation. We use less and less because we have fracking. But I mean, it's great for them. It's great for them because they think they're in competition with us. So, but I can assure you that people who see wealth and see that they can finally have a better life are not just going to give it up for some abstract notion about what's going to happen in the future with weather, and climate, which we have always adapted to. I mean, that's what tons of technology is about, adapting. The house that you live in is about adapting to climate. So, of course, I think they're pretty happy about it.
Yeah. David Harsanyi, a perfect article in the Daily Signal, Biden's climate denialism, and also at the National Review. Always good to talk to you, brother. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Just wrapping up there with China, I was thinking about when they hosted the Olympics and they shut the economy down for a couple weeks beforehand to clear the air, to show that to the world they're actually a clean place, when it's one of the most polluted places in the whole world. But we have to suffer here in America because of what they're doing to the planet. Give me a break. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word.
we were told that we don't have to worry about our borders because we really don't have a crisis there. What we have is a challenge. And we seem to constantly redefine or put different labels on what we know to be true. In fact, I think it's time for a moment of clarity. I went to Oxford Languages to find out just what a crisis is. So this is not my definition. This is what Oxford Languages said. A crisis is a time of intense difficulty or trouble or danger, a time when a difficult or important decision must be made. So what is it that I'm talking about? I am talking about our crisis at our borders.
Our friend Congressman Mike Kelly from Western Pennsylvania represents Erie, Pennsylvania, down south, talking, of course, about our southern border. He's with us right now. Congressman, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, Mike. I'm fine. Thanks for having me on.
Good to talk to you. It's amazing how the border, it's like it was in the news for a week, and then it goes away as if everything's solved. But nothing's been solved. If anything, it's only gotten worse since it was in the news a week or two ago.
Yeah, you know, there's a saying out there, there's no secrets in our family. There's just a lot of things we don't talk about. That is so true of this administration. No, and there's no problems. There's no problems. We just choose not to talk about them. And the president says, well, you know what? I'm going to put Vice President Harris in charge of this challenge at the border, and she'll take care of it. The only thing is she's failed to go to the borders, and I would have loved her to come up to Erie, Pennsylvania with me to see an emergency intake. Now, the reason it's called an emergency intake in Erie is because they don't have room for the children anymore at the areas where they come in. And I've often thought about this is incredible to go and see. There was about 150 children were there, Mike. We had scheduled up a visit to see them. The night before I was supposed to go up, we got a memo from HHS. Said, oh, no, you can't go up because the children have left. They've been taken someplace else. And I said, well, we already have it arranged, so I'll come up anyways to take a look. Well, some of the children had left, not all of the children. Wow. There was still about 45 or 50 of them there. I think another 90 had left. There's a second floor to this dorm, and all the COVID-infected children were on that floor, which I didn't go up to see them. But it was amazing. We have like 150 to 160 members of different agencies there to take care of these children. And they're on a 24-hour call, so they show up from wherever they are in the country, and they rush to wherever they're needed as an emergency would dictate. So there's nothing about what's going on at the border that's not a crisis. It is truly a crisis. It is something that this administration has just refused to discuss, and they just put it off. So I'm wondering, though, Mike, think about this. We're shuttling these children all over the place. Okay, they came from that triangle. They came up. I don't know how many left their homes and actually made it to America. I'm sure there was some lost in that process. They come to America. The cartels bring them in. They're at our borders for too lengthy a time. Then they get shuttled to someplace else that they don't know where they're going, and they're shuttled by people they don't know, and they're at another location, and then they're taken from there and they're shuttled someplace else. So very similar to what the cartels are doing is what we're doing. Once they come to the borders, then we take them on the rest of their journey. They have no idea where they're going. They have no idea who they're going to see. All I know is this: there's a tremendous cost in doing all of these different things, and real cost. Transporting people is very expensive. Sheltering them is very expensive. And so I look at this and please just give us an answer as to what you're doing.
And we call that compassion. It's amazing. We are just, you're so right. We're just one of the next steps of the cartel journey, right? The cartels are one step, one relay leg, and they pass it off to us. And then we send these kids to people who we don't really know who they are. We don't run proper background checks on where we're even sending these kids. And then we certainly don't follow up to make sure that they didn't get sucked up into drug trafficking or sex trafficking or anything else. It's a horrific thing, and the cartels love it.
It is.
We only got 90 seconds, Congressman. Where's the end? Okay. Like, look, there's no end to this, right? There's no desire to end it.
No. Well, this is a sin without end. The only difference between us and the cartels got paid to bring the children to the borders. Now our taxpayers pay to have these children taken care of. It's not that we don't have a welcoming heart. I do think we need to have an honest answer. And I just defy this. This is a dereliction of duty by the Biden administration. They are totally silent on this. And I'm so fed up with them rediscovering or this wordsmithing that they do for what's going on. This is irresponsible on the case of everybody handling this particular case. We have dedicated people on staff to help them, but we have no process, nothing in place, at least a total chaos, and there's absolutely no policy, Mike. There's no policy other than we'll take care of you at some point somewhere. But they told us the only difference between us and the cartels get paid to bring the children in. We pay for the children once they get in to go someplace else. Still, they have no idea where their future lies.
Congressman, I'm super grateful you're still talking about it, even though the mainstream media is not. Thank you for doing that.
Michael, thank you. We got to keep this story alive.
Sir.
We really do.
Yes, we will. Congressman Mike Kelly from Western Pennsylvania. Thank you, Congressman. I was talking to a Border Patrol friend of mine the other day. He's pretty high up. He does some advanced side task force work. And he said all those side task force have been canceled and everyone's been moved onto just proper, just gathering people at the border and doing the normal stuff with them to get them here, as opposed to doing the advanced, serious work that a lot of these border agents do with the actual major drug cartels and major sex and drug trafficking. Instead, everyone's just rounding up kids at the border because they keep coming and there's no end in sight. And if you want to do anything about it, you're a racist for even mentioning it. True story. Mike Slater, do it again tomorrow. Spread the word.